CNN continued its unexpected streak of consistently good interviews when reporter Laura Coates squared off with and relentlessly fact-checked MAGA Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at, and they are relatively long. Jim Jordan is one of the most prominent MAGA Republicans in the United States Congress, and ironically, he's actually the least effective, the least productive congressperson in terms of passing and sponsoring successful legislation. His approach is that we shouldn't pass legislation, you shouldn't legislate. Your goal is simply to appear on the Fox Propaganda Network and Newsmax and OAN to get gotchas and wage meaningless culture wars against the left and produce no material benefit for the American people. And surprisingly, he went to CNN and he squared off with Laura Coates. And in these clips, Laura Coates fact checks and pushes back on Jim Jordan relentlessly. And in the context of this, it's in the aftermath of Congress's testimony or hearing the testimony of special counsel Robert Hur, a Republican who investigated President Biden's classified documents case and ultimately chose not to bring charges. So with that context, we're going to play the clips and unpack them together.
There was a distinction, and huge distinctions, between the behavior of Trump in the handling of documents and that of Biden, specifically in what happened after the request to return those documents. And frankly, the distinctions he believes is maybe what led to the prosecution of Trump and not Biden. I mean, why, do you really think that if Trump had returned the documents, had not doubled down, had cooperated, had not had this year-and-a-half expanse between the first request and then, of course, the appointment of special counsel, that he would also still be charged?
I don't think it would have mattered what President Trump did. I think Jack Smith was going to go. I think the fact that Merrick Garland picked Jack Smith, the same guy who was looking for ways to go after the very people that Lois Lerner and the IRS targeted 15 years ago, conservative Tea Party people around the country. I think the fact that he picked Jack Smith just changed everything. He was going to go after President Trump no matter what he did. I mean, I just think that's, and then of course, I just think that's the case. And because we've seen it time and time again, that whole litany of examples where they've used this lawfare, this weaponization of government to go after President Trump. But Laura, today wasn't about President Trump. Today was about Robert Hur's examination of Joe Biden. And we laid out the facts there, and Robert Hur laid out the facts. That's what when Jack Smith completes this, when that's all over, I'll come over and talk about that. But I know Jack Smith's been out to get President Trump from the get-go, and I actually think that's why the Justice Department, Merrick Garland, selected him.
But you brought up the former President Donald Trump as part of the double standard, and there's also great explanation and pains from this report.
No, you brought up the fact that Democrats brought up President Trump, and that's why I gave that. Three people ran for president: Secretary Clinton, President Biden, President Trump. Only one's been, they've all been accused of mishandling classified documents, but only one of them is getting prosecuted. And the American people see that.
I do hear you. Let's not do the chicken and the egg dance for a second, of which came first. Trump was raised today as part of the conversation. Noted. Trump.
So you can tell she's getting annoyed. But again, so here's the thing. So number one, Jim Jordan's lying, which is what Jim Jordan does. He's a MAGA Republican. He's a Trump ally, which means there's a strong correlation between dishonesty and Trump support. So it's not unexpected. But number one, even Trump's own former prosecutors, Trump's own former DOJ officials like Attorney General Bill Barr, who worked for Donald Trump, said the charges would probably not have been brought if Trump had cooperated. As a matter of fact, we know that that's the case because the documents that Trump surrendered in that year-long span that the FBI and the National Archives and the DOJ were trying to negotiate the return of the documents he did surrender, he was not charged for. So Jim Jordan is lying. We have proof that he would not have been charged. Trump would not have been charged if he just turned the damn documents over. We have expert testimony to that effect, and we have proof because Jack Smith didn't charge him for stuff he surrendered, number one. Number two, this idea that, Merrick Garland picked Jack Smith, who's like this anti-Republican Rottweiler, that's proof that no matter what, they would have gone after Trump. Well, they didn't appoint, Jack Smith wasn't the one investigating Trump until the DOJ decided to appoint a special counsel, right? So if Trump had cooperated in the first place, Jack Smith wouldn't have been appointed. It wasn't like Jack Smith was appointed and then Trump cooperated or didn't. This was after a year. This was after a year of Trump's refusal to cooperate with the National Archives and the Justice Department. Then Jack Smith was appointed to investigate and bring charges against Trump. So again, Jim Jordan is lying. He just lied verifiably twice. And then, of course, even with his revisionist history, I didn't bring up Trump. You brought up Trump. Well, no, as Laura Coates points out, all throughout the testimony of Robert Hur, Republicans brought up an apparent double standard. And MAGA Republicans seem to think that, listen, if you accuse people of a crime, they must be charged if you charge a Republican. So if you have 3 people or 4 people, let's say 2 are Democrats, 2 are Republicans. Well, if the Republicans are charged, or if a Republican is charged, you must therefore charge a Democrat in order for justice to be served. That's not true, because there are material differences between the Trump classified documents case, the Hillary Clinton classified documents case, the Biden classified documents case, and the Mike Pence classified documents case. Mike Pence wasn't charged either. Jim Jordan conveniently forgets about that. Another clip here, again, in which Coates and Jim Jordan spar.
Why does the fact that you've got a special counsel assigned to oversee it, and he himself, in response to questions today, Mr. Hur said that he did not feel restricted, he did not feel interfered with, he didn't think there was any undue influence, and he had the resources he needed to fully investigate this. He was previously a Trump appointee, and he has made statements that colleagues like Adam Schiff had called gratuitous about his memory. I do wonder, though, if these are his statements. These are
Trump
his statements, Congressman.
He was appointed by Merrick Garland. I mean, Merrick Garland, the Biden...
Congressman, excuse me. He was appointed for this by Merrick Garland. In the past,
that's
he
what
had
matters.
been a part of the Trump appointment.
Of course, but that's what matters. The Attorney General for Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, appointed him as the special counsel. That's what matters. So, okay, the Democrats, they're going to get mad at Robert Hur and say all the things they said in the hearing today. He was appointed by the Democrat Attorney General, for goodness sake, and he found what he found. And he didn't prosecute, for goodness sake. Again, I think highlighting this double standard.
So again, Jim Jordan's argument is ridiculous. This idea that, okay, yes, in the past, Robert Hur served in a capacity under Donald Trump as a U.S. attorney. He's been a lifelong Republican. He wrote very politically charged language about President Biden in the very same document, in which he says he's not going to bring charges. All of these facts at least suggest or imply a potential partisan bias in the investigation. And Jim Jordan says, well, none of that counts because Merrick Garland appointed Robert Hur. Ergo, any conclusion that Robert Hur creates is by definition biased and favorable towards the Democrats. So he gives the game away. There is no timeline. There's no permutation in the multiverse in which Jim Jordan or MAGA Republicans would accept an outcome of a special counsel that didn't automatically charge Joe Biden. That's the only outcome they accept. Anything to the contrary, no matter what the facts say, is proof of bias in their mind. It's just an unfalsifiable thesis. They are outcome oriented. The only way to satisfy them, period, is to prosecute Joe Biden. So in this last clip, actually, I do want to play a couple more clips after this, just very short ones, but this is the last relatively long clip of Coates and Jordan sparring.
Again, I think highlighting this double standard.
Well, I do wonder one more point about this, because in the past, and I remember this came out after the Mueller report, you wanted the public, when it came to having read the special counsel report, and of course I'm paraphrasing you here when I bring this up, that you believed it was appropriate to move on and get back to the business of legislating. And now it seems that you want to pursue the audio and beyond. Why are you not satisfied by the conclusion of the special counsel? Is it because the result was not what you'd like? Because you seem to be... I want to finish my question. I just want to finish my question so I can make it very clear for the audience. They can get the benefit of both of our conversations.
Sure.
You are in line with the finding that, and the belief that his memory was an issue, but then the conclusion of the report seems to be the only thing that's problematic. So can you really have it both ways?
I think Robert Hur, to some extent, is having it both ways. Joe Biden met the elements of the crime, but because he's a sympathetic guy who, a forgetful older man, we're not going to prosecute. Okay, that's the thing. Well, let us see for ourselves. Give us the audio tapes, not just of Joe Biden, but all the witnesses you talked to. We got the transcripts this morning from just Joe Biden. We'd like all the transcripts, and frankly, we'd like the audio tapes, as I said, for every witness, 147 witnesses.
I'll also point out that in his capacity as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan has released very few transcripts in his various investigations of President Biden and Hunter Biden, right? So he wants full transparency from the Department of Justice while giving none in his capacity as well. typical MAGA Republican hypocrisy. But again, Laura Coates is right. She phrased it in a question, but it's absolutely true. The MAGA Republicans are outcome oriented. Literally the only outcome of that investigation that would have satisfied them is recommending charges against President Biden. That's it. There are no facts. There's no exculpatory information that would satisfy them. And also, again, Jim Jordan lies about Robert Hur's conclusions. He says that, Robert Hur says that Biden meets all of the facts, satisfies all the criteria of a prosecution, but he just chose not to do it. That's not true, because the single biggest criterion in terms of prosecuting somebody is whether or not you, the prosecutor, believe that you can make the case beyond all reasonable doubt to a jury. And that was a determination that Robert Hur believed he could not satisfy, right? Besides which, it wasn't just President Biden's memory that caused Robert Hur to not pursue charges. He also said in the executive summary of the report, one of the very first sentences, there are other innocent reasons or other potential innocent explanations as to why classified documents were in Joe Biden's possession. That's another reason, right? But again, Jim Jordan is highly reductive. I want to play this other clip here in which Jim Jordan tries to make the argument that Donald Trump is actually at the peak of cognitive and mental function.
I found that striking because you saw some of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle pointing out that Trump also shares some memory lapses. He also does make mistakes. Do you concede that both have a similar issue?
Oh, come on. Come on. I mean, everyone makes mistakes in life. I mean, we're human beings, for goodness sake. But there is no way you can say President Trump he's as sharp as they come. His memory is as strong. I was just with him over the weekend. I know and the American people.
Yeah, but you're a MAGA cultist. I mean, by that standard, Jim Jordan, Democrats are with Joe Biden all the time, and they say President Biden is as sharp as they come too, but you cast aspersions on that. So I'm going to cast aspersions on your conclusion as well. The fact of the matter is that if you look at polling, poll after poll after poll shows that the majority of Americans believe that Donald Trump is also mentally unfit for office. Now, the perception is worse for President Biden, but the perception is also there for Trump. And as Laura Coates points out, and as Democrats took great pleasure in pointing out during the testimony, Donald Trump not only forgets about things, he infamously confused his wife with a woman that he raped, E. Jean Carroll. We have the video footage of that as well, to say nothing of the fact that, unlike Joe Biden, Donald Trump is stupid, inexperienced, uncurious, and corrupt. So in this binary choice, there's simply no question, even if we take the Republicans' claims at face value, which we shouldn't, but even if we do, they still lose because Joe Biden is objectively the better person, the better candidate, and the better president. Let me know what you think in the comments.